Like every other kid at school, I took standardized tests. Mindset and skin tone slightly different from the rest. And one statement, one question always had me undone. All those different racial boxes, but I can only check one. Black, white, Native American, my head spins making millions of comparisons between my father's skin and my mother's skin, my black kin and my white kin. I think forget it and just declare myself black. But then the next day's history lesson brings my thoughts back to a time when my skin tone brought shame. I was evidence of racial mixing, and so they gave me a name, mulatto. Because there were rules, like something about one drop. One drop of black blood, any trace of African descent made you less than white. In fact, it made you completely black. I know it sounds completely whack, but it's true. You see, I used to think God had an epic beard and Caucasian features, that blue eyes and blonde hair blessed the one who created all creatures. But then I learned that Moses, the stuttering man who parted the Red Sea and set God's people free, he didn't look like a Calvin Klein model. He looked a lot like me. And so after years of Bible lessons, I realized that God's name in heaven is not black, white, woman, or man. It's Yahweh, Christ, the great I am. So what do we do with all these different racial boxes? Can we just put on colorblind goggles to stop this? No. The ignorance of ignoring race has been done before. You see my skin, and I see yours. So I can't tell you what to do. You can just go ahead and do you. But I've made my decision, signed the dotted line, and accepted my plight. And now I check God's box, because God made me from black and white. My name is Evan Woodson. I'm a graduate student here at OSU in the history department. I'm 22 years old. I'm originally from Owasso, Oklahoma. And what I want to talk to you about is really two different things. I want to talk to you a little bit about what spoken word poetry is. That's the first thing. The second thing is I want to tell you what spoken word poetry has done for me. So what you just heard me perform was a spoken word poem that I wrote kind of over the last 8 to 9 months, and it's called Boxes. And when you talk about spoken word poetry, sometimes it's difficult to describe. I've heard it described, it's kind of like jazz. It's a difficult thing to put into words, but when you hear it and when you see it, you know it. You can recognize it. Probably the most powerful thing about spoken word poetry is that it takes the best aspects from 3 different performance arts. It takes the best thing from a speech, a song, and a poem. So it's like all 3 of these. So the first thing is it's a lot like a speech. That's what we're doing this afternoon. You guys are sitting out there. I'm walking out on stage. I've got a mic. I'm using my words to communicate very, very clearly to you the message that I want you to understand. But it's not just like a speech. It's a little bit more creative. It's a little bit more artistic. So, I didn't walk out here. I don't have a podium. I don't have a tie on. And I think if I were just to deliver a speech, it would be a little bit maybe like an oratory or a lecture. So it's a little bit more artistic than a speech. So it's similar to a speech. It's also similar to a song. Back in the day, there was a group that kind of started this whole spoken word poetry thing, and the name of that group was the Lost Poets. Some of you guys might be familiar with Gil Scott-Heron and The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Some of these phrases and some of these groups are pretty strongly associated with spoken word poetry. So what they would do is they would actually perform it as if there was music in the background. There would be a stand-up bass or a drum or something like that. So it's like a speech, it's like a song, but most of all, it's poetry. Obviously, it's in the name, spoken word poetry. So, I came out here, there's lines, there's a rhythm to it, it's artistic. But if I would have written this poem out for you and you would have read it to yourself or read it in a book, it wouldn't have the same effect. Because when I performed my poem a few minutes ago, there were certain words that I hung on. I had a certain accent on certain words. I emphasized certain words. Some words I hit you hard with. Other phrases I ran through really quickly, or I sat back and let you kind of chew on them. So now that we have a little bit of context for what spoken word poetry is, I want to get to the more important part, and I want to talk to you about what it's done for me and what it means to me. So if you guys that are real attentive may have picked up from the poem that my father is black and my mother is white. And I was raised in Owasso, Oklahoma. I have very little to complain about. I come from a great family. I come from a great church. I come from a great community. But the reality is that it's not easy to grow up feeling like you're in between two different worlds. It's really not. Like I said, I had a great family, but I went to school and I learned that it was weird that dad was brown and mom was white. And I had to go to school to learn that because they raised me that wasn't part of my experience. And so the irony is that the place that I went, and I got torn down at school. I got worn down. I got made fun of. Got harassed a little bit. I felt awkward being a teenager. But the beautiful irony is that the place that tore me down, school, was also the place that built me up. Because at school, I learned about poetry and literature and history and writing, and I latched on to writing. And poetry became a process that allowed me to express some of my frustrations and allowed me to express some of the tensions I have and express who I am. And so the main thing I want to share with you is that I would encourage you not to deny any creative voice that you have. Whether it's writing or music or art or poetry or even blogging, I would hope that you can find a way to express yourself the way I have. I believe that God created humankind to create and innovate. Innovate, that's our theme this year. And these processes of creating, innovating, and making something out of nothing, these are some of the most basic instincts we have as human beings. Our souls crave it. And I would encourage you not to ignore or deny that force within you. Because when we don't create, we go crazy. And I know I do. Thank you.